Good evening, everybody, and welcome to We Inspire, a weekly interview session with entrepreneurs. Joining us today is a very special guest. Her name is Maithili Radhakrishnan, and she's the CEO and founder of iGatti Solutions based in Bangalore. Her USP is that she provides customized training solutions that leave an impression and touch the heart. And she focuses on corporates and students in the area of leadership and behavioral skills. I'll let her tell the rest of her story. So, welcome, Maithili.
Thank you. Thank you, Renoy. My pleasure.
Definitely. Thank you, Maithili. Thank you for joining us. So for everyone who's watching, we had planned a session with Maithili as part of Women's Day. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. So that's how we decided to do this We Inspire segment, for this Sunday. So thank you, Maithili, for taking out the time to do this. So to get started, can you talk a little bit about what iGatti does?
So we primarily started off as a corporate training company and focused on behavioral skills and leadership development for organizations in various different industries. And then I went on to my real passion, which is students. So I got this one stray opportunity to work with an engineering company, and I realized how much I love it, and went on to create a very elaborate competency map for what students really require based on a lot of research with recruitment teams in organizations and talent management teams in organizations, figuring out what people really want or expect from the freshers, and what is it that would really help these guys speed up their growth in the corporate world. And that led to working with the educational industries also. So I have a few engineering companies that I work with, but yes, primarily the bigger chunk is corporates across various different industries.
Fantastic. So I would like to hear more about your experience, but before that, I think it's important to get the story straight. So especially regarding the name of your startup. So can you tell us how you decided the name iGatti and what it means?
Well, it wasn't easy coming up with a name. I can tell you that much.
Okay.
I had many ideas, and I think being a creative person, I came up with names which only made sense to me and had to be explained to everybody else. I don't think iGatti is any different, but I think it's easier to explain this name. So it's iGatti, which means I speed through learning. So iGatti Learning Solutions. I use learning to speed up myself is what I meant.
I
Right. So
see.
that's what the name of my organization means.
All right. That's a very cool name. So Gati is which language is it from?
So it's originally a Sanskrit name, but a Sanskrit word, but it's also Hindi. Gati is speed.
Okay. Okay.
In Sanskrit and Hindi. Not a very popularly used word, but yeah.
Awesome. So what it means is I am responsible for my education and I can speed up my education and learning.
Yes, absolutely. I can speed up the process towards going towards my goals simply by using learning.
Well put, well put. So coming back to you, I think it's important to get your story out there because, before this interview, I had a chance to speak with you and you've been able to tell me how you started your company. And I found it very inspiring and at the same time, truly enjoyable. So I like to share that with our audience as well. So can you tell a little bit about your past prior to setting up, your startup or, your road to setting up your startup? How did that happen?
Right. So I have spent 16 years in the corporate world, and I have worked in several industries, IT, ITES, banking, engineering, manufacturing, right? So these were the industries that I have spent considerable time in. My journey has been very unique, and I think I have been lucky in terms of what happened to the world around me. And that's precisely how I got into training itself. So call centers were a big boom in India way back in 1999. And that's how I got into training. I began as a language, voice, and accent trainer, thanks to all the wonderful teachers and sisters who taught me back in my convent school.
Wow. Okay.
So that's how I began. I could never say thanks enough. It was wonderful. It's my schooling that got me into this career. I spent a couple of years doing that before I got opportunities to move into behavioral skills. I started off with simple things like time management, email etiquette, some semi-soft programs, doing induction programs, which had a little bit of code of conduct, a little bit of expectations of the organizations and stuff like that. And then I moved on full throttle into leadership development. The moment I stepped foot into leadership, when I became a first-time leader, I was already doing leadership development programs. So it was together. I was doing it and I was teaching it. So a lot of people said people who can do, people who cannot teach. And I think I used to use it as a joke with people all the time. But I I absolutely wholeheartedly disagree with that statement. Because if you're not able to do it, and if you're not able to make all the mistakes that the world dreads, you can't be a trainer. So whenever people ask me, what's the qualification for being a trainer? I say, well, you have to break your nose by falling down flat on the ground so many times over that you have so many things to speak about. This is how I failed, and that's how I failed, and that's how I failed. And these are stories that people learn from. So experience is the best teacher, yes. And I want to be that that pseudo experience, like, not really everybody does not need to go through rape to know that rape is bad, isn't it? So I want to be that information provider. And so that's how it worked for me. I went on to leadership development, and then I became the head of L&D for a really huge organization where I failed so badly in so many different ways. I was doing a lot of people management. I thrived as a trainer. I was really good in class. I was very good at content. I was extremely good at connecting with people, setting processes for post-training, interactions, refreshers. All of this was cakewalk. But when it came to people management, that was a different ball game altogether. And I realized, wow, to be able to teach this, I really need to master this. And I don't think the mastering has even now taken place to the extent that I would like. I still struggle, of course, because people are the biggest challenge in the world, isn't it? They are the greatest resource and they are the greatest challenge. So, and every human being is so unique, and that's what makes it so interesting.
Right.
So, as a head of L&D, first time it was my opportunity to be the head of L&D for this huge banking organization, banking and insurance organization.
Right.
And I stepped foot into the world of vendor management, back-end process and setting guidelines, serious OD interventions, working on performance management systems, creating assessment centers, understanding psychometric testing in the real sense of the word. So a lot of beautiful things that happen. But I think I also realized during this stint that I am in love with delivery. I am in love with design and delivery, to be precise.
Right.
So I wanted to be able to go back and understand exactly what an individual or an organization or a group of people at a certain level in a certain role, what exactly they need to be able to thrive in their respective roles. And I wanted to address those in the most innovative ways. So I have never ever, and I think this is my strength, I have never ever been a theory trainer, ever. So there are some organizations which would say, yes, I would still like you to use this matrix, this theory, this funda. And I would say, yeah, sure, I would, but I would prefer for the theory to be a derivation of the session rather than what we discuss as the core of the session. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if we are discussing Johari window, I don't want to begin with this slide showing the Johari window and explaining what the 4 quadrants are. That's not what I want to do. I want to be able to give you 5 different incidents that happen in a certain organization. I want to ask you questions based on those scenarios. I want to debate with you on what are the alternative ways of dealing with those scenarios. And then I want to ask you, how did you arrive at that? What would you have needed to be able to make that process faster? Right? And then they should say, maybe if I was a little more self-aware, I would have been able to do it. Maybe if I knew about the other person a little well, then I would have been able to do it. And then I would say, bingo, that's Johari window, right? So I never really was in favor of theory. I'm not an academician. I have never relied on books, or I have been a terrible reader also. Thank God for audiobooks. And so it has changed my life. I'm probably the first trainer in the world who says I'm bad at reading books, but I've always been a fantastic listener. And I surround myself with people who know more than me. I'm usually the dimwit in the room compared to all the people around me. So I'm surrounded by intellectuals. I'm surrounded by readers and philosophers and thinkers. So I listen to a lot of stuff, and then I go back and think about it myself and do some more reading. Then I want to do some reading. Then I want to do some research. I've never really, and this is my strength. And this is how I create a differential. My training programs are interesting. There is not a single person who can take a back seat and sit under the broken light in the dark and just slide deep down into their chair and go into a slumber. It's impossible for them to do that, because the entire program is based on, you tell me what you think, you tell me what you will do, how will you say it, fill in the blanks, those kind of things. And theory is just a outcome of our entire discussion.
Right. Actually, it's interesting. It's interesting that you would, say, you explain your teaching process, because I would call it, I would define it as, breaking away the traditional modes of education, wherein you are depending on knowledge in the books, or, what's the other word for it, mugging up and then vomiting it out onto your exam papers, or in this case, for your jobs and things like that. So you're breaking away from the shackles of tradition, at least the traditional way of learning and teaching. So my question over here is, did this cause a problem, because you were at this stage still in the corporate world? Did this cause any issues? And, is that one of the reasons why you decided to start an initiative of your own?
Well, actually, the methodology got me accolades. It was widely accepted. I was extremely popular. Okay. I did very well in all of my assignments. I have just had 4 organizations that I worked in over 16-year career. So I was fairly stable also. And in most of the organizations I have had, even today, I do not have any major marketing. I don't do digital marketing. I don't even have a website as of now. I'm not very proud of it, but that's the truth. All my marketing happens through my participants, the people that I have worked with. My managers have recommended me. My students have recommended me. The GETs who joined in many of the organizations that I used to have this journey with the GETs. I prepared a plan and would hang around with them for an entire year. So I remember everyone by name, by face, by story, and this is mutual. They remember me just as well. Okay. So now they are in very good positions in various different organizations, and they invite me to do learning interventions with them. They even want me to do annual contracts with them. So this is how my business runs. No, it was not the methodology was not resisted in the corporate world at all. Okay. What was difficult actually in the corporate world was the reason I decided to do something of my own was I think it is a blend of many different reasons. Okay. But the top reason was, I would say, some of the messages that some organizations and people, individuals, actually, it's not even the organization, it's 1 or 2 people at the very top level. They would insist on certain lessons which I could not agree with, or which I haven't practiced myself. I haven't implemented it in my life myself. And it was difficult for me to speak about those. So a classic example of that is just blindly follow the process. And
Mm.
this happened in traditional industries, right?
Mm.
Like banking, like engineering. There was, and that was a message that was needed to be given. Don't skip anything. Now, I understand don't skip anything is an important lesson, but to say don't question anything
Okay.
was very hard for me because I've questioned everything. My whole life, I have been not a conformist, right? So
Okay.
I've a non-conformist. So it was very difficult for me to say those things with conviction.
Mm.
And if you don't say it with conviction, it's useless. You might as well not say it. So that was one thing that was an ethical dispute. I felt that I have the ability to influence. I have the ability to create a indelible mark in the minds of people,
Okay.
to leave something behind for the rest of their lives. And I didn't want to leave things which I don't believe in. It was hard. So that was reason number one. And then I had other reasons, of course. I constantly was doing things I didn't really enjoy. I ended up doing a lot of corporate communication. If people were to ask me what are your greatest strengths
Mm.
from the perspective of work, I would say I can talk and I can write.
Mm.
So I ended up doing pretty much everything related to talking and writing in most organizations that I worked in. Every single assignment, I was writing letters for the managing director and the CEO. I was writing magazines. I was writing newsletters. I was doing proofreading for almost every important document that was going to go out. It
Mm.
was horrible,
Oh.
right? At the end of the day, I felt um, and I would say it's horrible because it's not my. If I wasn't doing that, I would have created so much more difference in the world of OD and L&D.
Mm.
Right? I was organizing family days. I was doing events. I was doing service award ceremonies. I was hosting pretty much everything. I was hosting client visits. Right? I would take most of the important clients out for dinner or for socializing, weekend trips. So I did a lot of things which, yes, they were aligned to my strengths, but they weren't really aligned to what I wanted to do in life. So that
Mm.
was another reason that I wanted to move away from the corporate world.
Okay.
And it so happened that I got a very beautiful opportunity to move away. And probably the third reason is also worthy of mention, though I was contemplating on whether I should actually mention it or not. But
Oh.
uh, being single, I also have faced a lot of harassment. I mean, harassment is probably a strong word, but yeah, borderline harassment. A lot of people asking you out, a lot of people wanting to know about your personal life, wanting to kind of be the man in your life who can give you advice and tell you what to do. A lot of people who came back to me and said, I think you're sad and you're depressed. And I have, well, I would know, right? This is about me. I really would know. So as I grew older and as I grew in the corporate ladder, I was interacting with more and more senior people. It was easier to handle these kind of comments when it came from a colleague or a counterpart.
All
But
right.
it became more and more difficult because you had to use so much more diplomacy and strategy to deal with these things when they came from the higher levels of the organization. I really didn't
Oh.
think it was worth the effort. So, so these were the three main reasons in that order, uh, which compelled me to think about alternatives besides the corporate world, besides a job.
Mm. Mm. Well, thank you for
Did I answer your
sharing.
question?
Yes, you did. And thank you for sharing that in detail because I'm sure a lot of women will be able to relate with that. It's not an easy thing to share it with, but you did. So thank you for that, Maithili. So let's move on to
Oh,
another area that you mentioned in the beginning because you said that you like interacting and teaching students. So can you
yes.
talk a little bit about what makes it so endearing to you?
Oh, yes. I think when I was in the corporate world, I used to work with super seniors as part of some of my assignments. I have done one-on-one coaching for the managing director of the company that I worked in, which is
Hmm.
like a splendid opportunity. But I also worked with GETs, people who just stepped out of their engineering colleges and joined, or management trainees, right? Who just get out of their MBAs, B school, and join the organization. So I have worked with freshers, and I can tell you, the days I was going to spend entirely with my GETs were the best days of my corporate life. So I realized that they are like this sponge, willing to soak in everything.
Oh,
And the younger generation is I don't know, maybe, like, what would you say? They're magical. They are so intelligent, so open.
okay.
I have never had this kind of a mentality when I was at their age. I was judgmental. I was black or white. I could not see shades of gray. It was very hard. And when I meet children today, and I call them children, I'm 42, and I think someone who's 21 happens to be a child now.
Mm, mm.
I see them as wise and open and super well exposed. It's incredible. They're able to catch uh, something which they haven't experienced very, very quickly. That was difficult for me. If I had to rely on my imagination, if somebody told me uh, what it was like
Mm.
to run an organization when I was 20 years old, I would have uh, simply said, "Oh, probably this person is being a snob and showing off that they run a company." And I would have judged the person and not really understood the content.
Mm.
But now, when I speak to a 21-year-old and I speak about the experiences of leadership, or speak about acquisition of a company, for example, to a 20-year-old, and they ask the most intelligent questions. They would say, "So what about the fact that it's like a marriage, isn't it? So who compromises? In a marriage, usually the girl goes to the boy's house. So in organizations, is it always like the smaller one goes to the bigger one? Or the more profitable one goes to or the less profitable one goes to the more profitable one? How does that work?" And I think this question is so brilliant,
Mm.
right? So I found working with youngsters just uh, bringing me back into being a student. That's what it did to me. Every time they asked me a question, I would, yeah, there are some parts that are easy to answer, but there were always parts that I had to go back and think about,
Mm.
right? It stimulated the process of learning all over again for me. And I thought, this is what I need to do. This is exactly what I need to do. I need to work with the youngsters so that I can stay a student all my life. I have never researched as much as I have done for working with students, as I have done with top level leadership programs. Not that much research required, but working with youngsters, oh, absolutely. Please go prepared,
Mm.
and remember, you will come back home and prepare again, right? So
Okay.
that's the joy of working with youngsters, actually.
Mm. Pleasure to hear that. I mean, when you say it out loud, right? I mean, I'm able to relate with that. Sitting here, even
Yes.
though I haven't experienced it, so certainly a pleasure to hear that. So another question I wanted to ask is that when you're training these employees, when you're training these students, and since they're asking all these questions, I'm sure you'll get questions, or I'm sure you will be able to share your experiences with them from your time when
Yes.
you started out in the corporate world. So I wonder, do you share your experiences, especially with young women, about the difficulties or the harassment, like you said, that you faced, and how do you sort of teach them or prepare them for that?
Actually, the best way to answer this question would be to say, um, the qualification a trainer requires, according to me.
Hmm.
If you want to be a life coach, if you want to be a behavioral trainer, and you want to be a facilitator of learning, call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
If you want to do well in that particular role and you want to do justice to that role, then you must necessarily have life experiences. This is what I have learned.
Hmm.
I have made more mistakes than most people I know. I have experimented more than most people I know. And this has provided me with the matter, with the substance, In fact, when I say I create customized learning solutions, I am very, very keen on not relying on theory. I'm not a theory person at all. In fact, I debate most of the theory that's available. So I would prefer to actually start with experiences in the form of caselets, in the form of scenarios, in the form of case studies, in the form of exercises like what would you say, what would you do, right? And then build on it so that the theory is a derivation of the entire session's discussion. So, well, do I share my experiences? Absolutely. Pretty much everything that I speak about, everything that I consider a learning objective or a outcome, a learning outcome, is based on my experiences in life. Some of the interventions give you an opportunity to address even very sensitive areas of learning, like how to deal with harassment, right? It's not something which is done as a as a training program in most organizations, I would say. But tomorrow being a very special day, I have 3 different sessions in 3 different corporates where I'm doing talks on what gravitas is for women. Gravitas as in, it's a part of executive presence. So how do you have that strength in your personality? How do you make people respect you, listen to you, and follow you, right? So that's a term that we use for it is gravitas. It's a Latin word, but very commonly used in the world of leadership as a weight in the presence of the person, right? The credibility and the aura which makes people want to listen to you and follow you. So what is it for women is the subject of my talks tomorrow. And yes, we will be addressing uh, a lot of nuances of behavior, nuances of things like communication, dressing, responses to comments, responses to insinuations, um, response to a certain or even common practices that are kind of acceptable. Like, let me give you an example. Usually people would say, don't force her to stay back. I think she will have to go home and take care of the kids and cook, and she has a lot of work when she goes back home also. Don't make her stay back. Now, are you going to accept it and hide behind this comment and say, oh, good, at least gives me an opportunity to go back home early today? Or are you going to find a way to still go back home if you need to, of course, but also to be able to say, hey, this is not my limitation alone. This is a limitation of every single human being, if at all it is a limitation, right? And how do you pass on messages like these so that you contribute in a big way to reducing gender inequality? So I do share my experiences, yes. I especially share my experiences because I never have taken the extreme routes. I have never gone and filed cases. I've never had to also. So I have managed it with a lot of diplomacy, with a lot of kindness, with a lot of what can I say? With a lot of strategy, right?
Okay.
And I love speaking about it to people. Being a single woman, I've had more experiences than a majority of other women. I can tell you that it has not been easy, and I have had to invest a lot of thought. And I definitely share it with people, but I don't go out of the way to make it the most important part of my um, learning outcome, because uh, sometimes if it's required, I'm not cribbing here. I don't want to be a cribber. I don't want to bring problems to the fore if they don't already exist. So I definitely would address them. If I'm doing a leadership development program and I have ladies, I would definitely like to speak about the slight differences that they will experience, right? And how to mitigate those challenges. I would definitely speak about it. But would I actually bring about the subject of sexual harassment? Not really, unless and until it's a question that's asked, unless and until it's the topic of discussion for the day.
Okay.
Other than that, yeah. So, but more or less, every learning intervention is based on experience. I just put together a set of experiences of a certain type to create a learning intervention. That's what I do.
Excellent. Quite a few points that you touched upon, and it makes sense, at least from an educational point of view, when you're training them. At this point, I'd like to get into another topic, that is your relationship with Vakilsearch and some of the services you've taken with the company.
So I approached Vakilsearch for registering myself as an individual and getting a GST number. So that's how I originally approached Vakilsearch. I had approached a lot of different organizations, different service providers, and I found it easier to deal with Vakilsearch. The person that I was in touch with was very, very easy to talk to. They simplified all these matters for me, explained the difference between various different types of whether you register yourself as an individual or a partnership or a company. What is the difference? What are the benefits? What are the pros and cons? How much work will you have? um, and I think he did not mince words. He did not hide anything from me. And when I asked the same questions which I asked him to other organizations or other service providers, there were some parts of it which they omitted. And I think that's the main reason why I went with Vakilsearch. They told me clearly, you would need to do this monthly stuff. There is a lot of paperwork. There is this, there is that, but all that said, you would definitely get the opportunity to do XYZ. You can hire people, you can go international, you can do this, you can do that. So I don't know if I was particularly ambitious, but I still don't think I am ambitious enough to have 20 branches in different countries and, hire 2,000 people. That's really not my goal in life. I would like to do good work. In terms of work, I would like to progress. What I was doing yesterday to what I will do 10 years from now should be awesome, spectacularly different and better. But do I need to increase in numbers? Not really. But there were some things that I really wanted to do, and it would have only allowed me to do that if I was a private limited company. So I made that option. I made that selection, a decision, and I subsequently continued to work with Vakilsearch year on year. So they do all my compliance related stuff, all my accounting related stuff. Um, any new questions that I have. I even got my will done by Vakilsearch. So or in the process of doing that. So yes, I have used them for my personal taxation, for everything related to my company. So basically, I think Vakilsearch is my one-stop shop for all legal work as of now. Pretty much
All right. So,
my trusting partners.
okay. So to finally conclude this interview, can you talk about some of the challenges you faced as part of the COVID situation that has affected businesses all over the country and all over the world? And at the same time, what are your future plans as well?
Sure. So I registered in 2019 in May, and I was just beginning to do well when the pandemic happened to the whole world. It was tragic. It's tragic in more ways than one, of course. The number of people we have lost, the kind of losses economies have had. So my personal loss is not such a big deal, and I don't think I should speak about it in great. But yes, there was a period of absolutely um, no work. Right, I think for a period of 3 months, I was doing nothing. And it would have been a great time for me to create my own website, but I just got lazy, and the only thing I did was uh, 108 Surya Namaskars. So, um yes, so it did set me back a little bit. That was the time in February of 2020 was the time I was beginning to work with academic institutions. Before that, I was pure play corporate. I had a set of clients, and I was doing a variety of programs for them. For some guys, I was managing the calendar. For some, I was doing one-off sessions for them, and I was doing okay. But this was the first time I was going to step foot into large volumes, and I was going to be able to hire more people and get contract staff and do train the trainers and actually create the kind of impact that I would have created would have been large scale, right? So it was a setback. Colleges closed down. There was no point in doing something like. There was no way to do something like this, and there was a lot of uh, I think almost everyone in this industry, in the world of behavioral skills and leadership development training, would have believed that it is not possible to do this online, right? So whenever people said, can you create e-learning modules? And there are so many companies which do that. There are a lot of platforms which give you self-learning modules. And it never works for behavioral skills or leadership development, or that's what we all thought, right? But it did not work in that way. It did not work when we had a presentation and somebody doing a voiceover. It did not work, right? It started working when when vlogging happened, when videos made their way into our lives. It started working. We realized, oh, micro learning is possible.
Yeah.
And all you need to do is put it into small bursts, and then it enters people. Of course, you cannot have a set or laundry list of learning objectives and then get into a training room and do it for 2 or 3 days at a stretch. Now, that modus operandi would not have worked for online training, right? And that was a limitation. We have always traditionally done it that way. We took people out of the office, went to a fancy resort or a nice hotel, booked up food, played a lot of games to ensure that people don't sleep, they get interested, right? And they're away from work, they don't get disturbed by their phone calls, etc. And it was a model that worked. I still like that model. It's not that I'm against it. But what COVID has taught me, what this pandemic has taught me, is there are alternatives which work just as effectively, if not better. In certain ways, I think they're even better, especially because you have learned to break up your learning objectives into small, little palatable pieces. And you give this flexibility to people to absorb learning. You do it. You do a 1.5 hour session. You allow people an hour to do their own things, like maybe check their emails, do their office work, deal with stuff that they need to do at home, and then come back. And in this time, they have had reflection happening consciously and subconsciously. And I think that works even better. Yes, I can't play games, but I don't know if I mentioned this. I love humor, and I have always incorporated humor into all my learning interventions, especially if I'm doing a couple of days or 3-day program. I necessarily make it a stand-up comedy session. People are laughing all day long. Some of it is planned, and most of it is not even planned, because I think I have self-deprecating humor built into me. So it's really easy. It comes in easy for me. And that really helped also. I am funny, and so it's easy for me to keep the attention of people without using games, without using props, without making people stand up, sit down, that kind of stuff. So that's a limitation that I have definitely crossed out. That's a challenge that I have been able to deal with really well. I do believe in the online training cause, and I believe it's absolutely possible to make it just as interesting and effective. So, with the advent of 2021, I have started doing a mix of both online interventions as well as the traditional face-to-face learning interventions back again. But the face-to-face interactions are still limited because we need open areas, and you need a large space, people spread out. So it's not that easy, but yes, some outbound trainings are happening. A lot of my training continues to be online, And I'm really happy with this model. I'm extremely happy, not just because it's effective, but also because of what it gives me. I don't have to step out. I don't have to deal with traffic. I don't have to travel all the time, book tickets, So yes, I'm happy with this online model. My future plans would involve being able to think of more and more, and this is my strength anyway. I customize learning solutions, not just in terms of what to cover, but also in terms of methodologies. And over a period of time, I have managed to do very unique things. I have managed to do, like I said, stand-up comedy-based programs. I have managed to do management in capsule, like small bursts of 15 minutes. I have been able to do like coffee with Karan model of learning, like what you're doing with me actually, interview model of training, and so many different new methodologies. And I realized with the pandemic, it's important to build on this continuously every day, come up with new ways to, and not get stuck with this limited, oh, I don't like making videos. Oh, I don't like me. There is no such thing as don't like it. If it serves the objective, it has to happen. So these are the few lessons that I have learned, and my future goals are just to continue doing what I'm doing and to be able to get back to working with my students as soon as possible. Colleges have begun to open, so yes, it does look like we're going to we're going to pick it up from where we left.
All right, Maithili, with that, we come to the end of our interview session. Thank you very much for taking the time to share all this information and your life experience with us. It's truly been a pleasure. So from all of us here at Vakilsearch, we wish you the very best in all your future endeavors and a very happy Women's Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Renoy. I hope to be in touch with you.
Definitely, definitely. Yes.
Thank you to all the viewers. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.